Welcome, U.S. government class. So to help supplement your notes, I'm going to make these videos that go along with the note pages. So hopefully in our Unit 1 notes, these can help you keep up with all the material. So to start off here, what is government? Okay, this entire course is based around the United States government and the framework that it was designed on, how the different branches interact, and how it actually applies to our lives. So the very basic question is, what is government? What is it? Why do we need government? And why should you care about government? Those are the three essential questions for the entire class that I want you to always keep in mind. You know, people always wonder, why do I need to know this about the government? Why should I care about the government? What does the government even do? And there's a lot of misconceptions out there that hopefully we can straighten out for you over the course of the year. So what is government? Government is the institution through which a society makes and enforces policies. Public policies are all the things the governments decide to do, whether that's make new laws or tax or implement new policies. That's public policy. So all government is a mechanism through which society runs and operates. And there are a lot of different types of governments available to us. We live in a republic where we vote on representatives that represent our best interests. Then we have democracies where people vote on all issues. We have autocracies where one strong person rules over all issues. We have monarchies. We have oligarchies. We have constitutional systems. We have all of these different ideas and theories all coming together. But government is just the institution through which a society is organized and ran. And that can be very loose, that can be very structured, that can be formal, that can be informal. There's a lot of different variables of it. But I love this quote from James Madison in one of the Federalist Papers that we'll be talking about. What is government itself but the greatest of all reflections on human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls, what we call checks and balances, on government would be necessary. So when we create a government, men aren't angels. And in our government, we create a system where nobody should be able to gain too much power. Let's do some very basic introductions to government as well. Something that you probably learned in second or third grade are the three branches of government. How quickly we forget those things when we're not reintroduced to them regularly. So three branches are your legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. No matter what government you look at, these are the three basic functions of a government. In our system, we separate them and they each operate independently. Now, some systems can morph them together and have one person execute and be the legislative. So what do? Legislative branch. Our Congress here in the United States, made up of the House and the Senate, makes the laws. That's their primary function. They frame the public policy. So the tax policy that you see in the United States is because of Congress, not because of President Trump. New laws that are being created are not because of the president, but because of the Congress. They are the legislative branch making the laws. So what's the executive branch's job? They have the power to execute and enforce and administer the laws that are created by Congress. So a lot of people think, oh, the president's the most powerful person. Well, he can only enforce the rules that the Congress creates. That's a limit on his power. He can't create new rules out of thin air, or new laws, I should say, out of thin air. So the president and the executive branch, a lot of people think it's only the president. The executive branch is massive. It's part of the bureaucracy that we're going to learn about this year. So the FBI is part of the executive branch of government. The State Department that deals with foreign policy issues is a part of the executive branch of government. All of these different departments and things that you learn about in society, they're all under the umbrella of the executive branch, and the president's the head of that branch. Lastly, we have the judicial branch. They have the power to interpret laws, determine the meaning of laws, and settle disputes about laws and interactions and disputes between different people within society. So the judicial branch is essential that they're separate, because if you're enforcing the laws, you're going to always assume the people you arrest and are enforcing these laws on are guilty. The judicial branch is supposed to be the nonpartisan intermediary that decides what's right and what's wrong. That's the role of the judicial branch and judges in our country. So Another basic definition we need to get out of the way is, what is a state? And when I say that, most people think, oh, Indiana is a state, Ohio is a worse state, Michigan is a great state because they have a great football team. A state is a body of people living in a defined territory that's organized politically. They have a government, and they have the power to make and enforce laws within their own territory, their recognized borders. So the technical term we use for that is not nations, it's not governments, it's not countries, it's state. It's a political state. So what are the four characteristics of a state? You have to have a population. You have to have people that recognize themselves as citizens of that state. So the state of Indiana has a population, but do they have a recognized territory and sovereignty to make rules without anybody else telling them what to do? No, the United States has the supremacy clause of the Constitution where their laws supersede Indiana state laws. So they don't have it. So they're not a political state. Canada is a political state. Mexico is a political state. Japan is a political state. Paris is not a political state. Okay? Russia is a political state. So what we think of in our head as countries, these governments that we interact with on a international basis, those are what we call political states. So to break that down a little bit more here, population, whether it's large or small, okay, it could be China, the largest country in the world, or Luxembourg, or the Vatican City, the smallest country in the world with only a few thousand people living in it. They are still having a population, a territory. So you have to have land that your people are living on under this authority. If they have sovereignty, the government has to have power within the borders to make rules and laws and regulations the citizens have to abide by in that territory. And then lastly, you have to have government. There's got to be some sort of organization in society through which society has to abide by. Okay? Next, how did states arise? There are four theories, and they all can apply in different scenarios of how a state came into power. So the first is force theory, and I have Kylo Ren from the Star Wars movies up there. That's the idea that the Empire goes and they take over a new galaxy and they rule it by force. And if you get in their way, they're going to kill you and force you to live under their rule. So a group or individual takes over territory by force. The force theory follows the rule that they rule with fear, and therefore people follow them, giving them sovereignty. They use military to conquer new territories. They have citizens that are living underneath them, even if it's in fear. And you can look throughout history, and you can see different territories that were taken over by the force theory to expand territories. Whether you're talking about the Roman Empire, or you're talking about the Nazis in World War II, they both used the force theory to spread their influence. Next, you have the divine rights of kings, which doesn't apply as much in today's world, but it's still relevant historically. Most European powers, and a lot of places around the world, had some sort of monarchy set up where you had a person in charge because God decided they were in charge. They were the divine ruler. They were anointed by God to rule over their own people, and therefore it was a hereditary line, and people recognized them as the leader and the authority figure because God made them that authority figure. The next two are evolution and social contract theory. Evolution theory is exactly what it sounds like. Over a long period of time, a bunch of different tribes or a bunch of different groups come together and eventually form into one unified group. Germany is a great example of this. Germany was a group of hundreds of warring clans for thousands of years that over time slowly came together and formed the country of Germany. Lastly, we have the social contract theory. This is a theory from John Locke, a political philosopher, that essentially says whenever citizens enter into a society, they form a contract with their government. Individuals will give up some of their power, okay, some of their authority over their own lives in exchange for security, in exchange for protection from a government. And that's the expectation we have from our government. We, the people, might still be in control, and if the government breaks that contract, we can overthrow that government and install a better government. That's an idea from the Declaration of Independence that we'll talk about later. Thank you.